Hey everyone, I'm your host Anthony. We do content like this weekly, so hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified. If you want more content like this, click the like button and please leave a comment. Thanks again for watching. Hey everyone, and welcome to our live class. We're so excited to have you here today and looking forward to a great lecture. My name is Anthony and I'll be your host. I'm joined on the line by Dr. Daniel Kalish, the founder of the Kalish Institute, who will be conducting most of the presentation today. I'm going to pass it off to him in just a moment to kick off today's topic of repair damaged metabolism, organic acids, lab interpretation. So this is super exciting, and we know organic acids is a very commonly ordered test, so I'm sure we're going to be learning a lot. Now, I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping items before we begin. I've muted everyone by default. And number two, if you have any questions during the course of this live class, please submit them into the chat panel. The questions will come to me as the host, and I'll be conducting a live Q&A with Dr. Kalish at the end of today's presentation. And lastly, we'll be hosting a live demonstration at the end of today's live class with our head of practitioner partnerships, Adrian Martinez. So for those of you who are new to Rupa Health, feel free to stick around if you would like to learn more about how we can help you optimize your practice. And for those of you who already use us, thank you so much. And if you need to get back to your day or your practice, feel free to hop off at that point in time. So I'd now like to hand it off to Dr. Kalish to begin the presentation.
All right. Thank you so much, Anthony. Thank you, Rupa, for sponsoring this. I always like to get the message out about organic acids. I'm super excited to be here to do this. And I have this mentorship class. I teach 5-6 hours a week, and every class, every week, we're talking about Rupa Health. Everyone's using the program now, and it's been a great addition to our industry. So I want to thank you guys for providing a solution for the doctors. It's been a very important tool for us to have. Very innovative and creative group of people, and solved some pretty big problems that we've had in practices. So for those of you that are new to me, I've been around for a while. I've been doing this for 20-30 years, somewhere in that range. I've been teaching at the Kalish Institute that I created in since 2006. And so the main goal of the courses that I teach, this one, all of the classes really, is to empower doctors so that they can learn how to interpret labs at the highest level. Not like mediocre, not like I'm going to look at what the lab company told me to do kind of level, but really understanding every lab marker in detail, applying that directly to your patients, seeing the connection between that human suffering, what's going on with that person, and what you see in the labs, and then fixing stuff. That's really my goal. And the different classes that we teach are designed to get your confidence and lab interpretation skills going, get your practice built up. We do a lot of practical business application teaching as well, and really helping you create a practice in the functional medicine arena. That's really what we're all about. So then in terms of me personally, I've been involved with research projects with Mayo Clinic. I'm working now with the scientists that develop much of the lab testing that we all do. Dr. Richard Lord, you probably don't know of him. He's been retired for a long time, but he's the scientist that created the microbiome test, which was the first one was called the GI-FX. And he's the scientist that first conceptualized the idea of doing organic acids in a non-pediatric population, for adults. And Richard and I have been working together very closely since 2015. And 99% of what we're going to talk about today is right from his word, directly from his words. So again, he's the scientist that developed this work. I'll talk a little bit more about him in a little while. I'm still in practice. I talk to patients 2 times a week. I have a whole telemedicine practice. I don't see people in person anymore. And speaking of telemedicine, telehealth, we're offering a discount for Rupa Health folks. The code is as simple as we could make it, RH21. If you forget that, you can contact Rupa or contact my office. And that's for our telehealth masterclass. If you're interested in expanding out and starting to do some of your work on Skype, on the phone, through Zoom, something like that, then this is really a good way to get started and just kind of see how much that may help you. You get 20% off if you're interested in that kind of work. And I've been doing telehealth, telemedicine for 16 years. I haven't seen a patient in person for a really long time. It's a great way to run your practice. It's so low stress. you're walking around in your jeans, you know, talking to people, and there's no overhead involved in it. It's, you know, when I go visit doctors in our training program and I'm in the clinic and you're rushing from room to room, I mean, it's just really great to have maybe not your whole practice, but a component of your practice be oriented around telehealth, telemedicine. Okay, so there's a little masterclass kind of introduction to the subject area there for you guys, if you're interested. All right, and then, you know, we're talking about today is looking at the labs, and I'm going to talk about organic acids for a little while, but then I want to show some tests so you can see the direct application of how this works. I've got a case from our class this morning that came up, and I just dying to show you guys the lab. It's so cool what you can see on these tests. And you do need to know a lot of science. So you do need to learn the metabolic pathways and how all this works. We're going to talk mostly about mitochondria today, but we're thinking about the applications of this: prevention of cardiovascular disease, restoration of mitochondria after infections. We're getting patient after patient after patient after patient now who, you know, had COVID, either got really sick or didn't, but is now suffering from mitochondrial problems as a result of having COVID. And so that's a huge area that we're going to all need to learn how to address. And nowhere better to do this than with organic acids testing. In fact, I don't know that there is another way to really look at the mitochondria in the way that you need to, other than organic acids testing. So we want to look at how the mitochondria work, give you an introduction to some of the supplements. How can you prescribe magnesium? What's an effective dose of CoQ10? How about NAC and glutathione and B vitamins? You know, and creating a program. Oh, you know, should be on that list also is free-form amino acids. How to create a program using amino acids, magnesium, CoQ10, some B vitamins that can be impactful and life-changing for a patient, whether they have fatigue or depression or brain fog, if they're overweight, they have a metabolic syndrome problem, they have high cholesterol, whatever the issue is, mitochondria are an essential component in any of these treatments that we're going to do. Okay, so if we take a big step back and think about what's really going on here, it's at a biochemical, physiological level, it's really about the flow of electrons going around, right? And where do these electrons come from? Well, the sun is shining, plants are absorbing stuff, we're eating plants, animals are eating plants, we're eating animals, right? So this is almost like a cosmic connection. But what we're looking at with the mitochondria are how are electrons processed in the human body from our food, right? And how does our genetics and our nutritional status impact that? And there's going to be some kind of heavy duty slides in here, and don't get too stressed about it. It's stuff that you probably looked at when you were in school, but you do need to know these pathways in order to really get to the deeper level of interpretation of the lab. So I only try to put in things here that you're going to be able to apply for to your patients directly. So it's a pretty simple equation. You breathe, you get oxygen. Most of that oxygen is designed to go right to your mitochondria to help with the electron transport chain. That's a final step, as oxygen is involved in that. You eat glucose or fats or proteins, and those are then going to be morphed into the ATP or energy that we're producing in the mitochondria. So this combination of food and oxygen is firing all this up. And when I was first working with Richard in the very first month or two, he asked me this relatively innocent question, which I got wrong. And it set me on a journey to really understand what was behind the question. And so the question he asked me, and I'll ask you too right now, is what's the major source of reactive oxygen species? What's the major source of free radicals in the human body? Oh, and I'm sorry, I gave it away. The answer is on the slide. So don't look at the slide. What would you say? And what my answer was environmental toxins. I was like, mercury, lead. And he was like, no, kid, you know, you got that one totally wrong. No, he didn't say it that way. He's a very gentlemanly fellow, but he basically said, no, the major source of oxidative stress in the human body is from mitochondrial energy production itself. So not, you know, this is a complicated thing when you're looking at the labs. You have to learn, you know, take this into consideration. So too much oxidative stress, not good for your blood vessels. And then there's glutathione along with the other antioxidants that are standing between damage to the mitochondria from oxidative stress and a healthy bunch of mitochondria. So we're dragged into this world of antioxidants, and in particular, glutathione, when we're looking at and trying to correct the mitochondria. So here's a schematic of what they look like. There's a lot going on in the mitochondria. And here's a really overly simplified version of what's happening at the cellular level, is that we're taking glucose, converting it to pyruvic acid, which is on the labs that we're about to look at, into acetyl-CoA. It goes through the citric acid cycle where we're starting to really generate larger and larger amounts of ATP. At the end of this process, the ATP all comes together with the electron transport chain. So as you're breaking your food down, you're spewing out these molecules, right, that eventually are going to fuel or push the electron transport chain along. And if you have a healthy set of mitochondria, this whole process works really well. If the mitochondria are damaged, then you can't make ATP very well. We had a doctor in class this morning who was talking about a case, and the patient had anxiety with some depression. And we ran organic acids on that person. In fact, if we have time, we'll look at this lab later. And the neurotransmitter markers, which we all expected to be problematic, were perfect. Not good, but perfect. The entire problem that was generating the anxiety was in the mitochondria. And upon reflection, the patient said that, well, you know, I get anxious because I just don't feel like I have enough energy to get things done. And within hours of treating her mitochondria, it's just a true story. We just reviewed this case like 2 hours ago. I don't even have to make up things. These are like the real things that happen in this kind of work are so, you know, intense. Within a few hours of starting the program, the anxiety started to lift, the energy started to come back, and her mitochondria started to perk up. And that's incredible. You know, that's incredible that you can do that. It doesn't always work that well, but, you know, stuff is pretty deep. Why are the mitochondria important? When I'm talking to patients about it, I will always say, this is, you know, how important is breathing to you? Well, let's try to hold our breath, you know. Take a deep breath in and breathe out. And hold your breath out. And see how long can you hold your breath out. And when you start to get a little panicky and it's starting to not feel very good, you should start to think, well, what's happening here? What's happening is that your mitochondria need oxygen to function. So this is not like a alternative fuel supply or something else that the body can do in a different way. The mitochondria are as important to your body literally as breathing and oxygen are. And this is where the oxygen's going. So that's a nice way to get it, kind of drive the message home to patients, because everyone can imagine or can, you know, hold their breath for a minute and then see what happens. So now the bigger picture here, and I'll just mention this briefly, is that we have glutathione standing there protecting our mitochondria as the master antioxidant to keep the mitochondria safe. And that prevents this damage thing from happening. At the bottom of this slide, see the damage? The damage is prevented by glutathione. But glutathione is in constant competition. The making of glutathione, the production of glutathione constantly competes with this other process called methylation. And guess who wins every time? Glutathione. So your body will prioritize moment to moment, second to second, the production of glutathione over the process of methylation. Now, if you're healthy, you can do both, but we're talking about people who are sick. So if your glutathione levels or your glutathione demand is huge, that in and of itself will decrease and interrupt your methylation process. So here's our oxidative stress, is that if there's a lot of oxidative stress, your body will make more glutathione, and then in response to that, methylation will slow down to a trickle. Okay, so the methylation is directly involved with what we're talking about. And there's all kinds of labs you can do. We'll look at a few, but just want to mention you can test for lipid peroxides to look at the damage to the membrane of the mitochondria. You can measure CoQ10 and magnesium, the two most important nutrients for the mitochondria. You can measure the fatty acids and amino acids. You can get pretty complicated with this stuff. And at the same time, you can keep it really simple too. Organic acids testing is definitely the way that you want to go if you want to start to really treat mitochondrial disorders. And we're about to have a tidal wave of mitochondrial problems that I don't think our country has ever seen before with the long COVID patients coming in. Most of those people are going to have mitochondrial problems, and you're going to have to learn how to fix them, you know, to help those people in any kind of sense of what we can offer as a benefit for people that are suffering from that kind of stuff. Organic acids testing can also measure detox capacity, which is important for our modern times, and it measures directly oxidative stress. So you have this whole package here of testing. And when the first thing that whenever someone signs up for one of our classes, you know, the ones that you have to pay for, the first thing they ask are like, what are the supplements? What are the dosages? How I do this? So I try to have a slide on this. It's not complicated. CoQ10, magnesium, B vitamins, carnitine, and free-form amino acids. That's the formula for mitochondrial rebirth, regeneration, biogenesis. Now, you can't just give everybody this stuff. If you did, you wouldn't even be a doctor person, right? I mean, they could just go out and buy this from the health food store. The testing shows you how much of each of these products and which ones are the priorities. So you can have a customized program for that person. But it's 5 variables that you need to be juggling. Okay, 5 variables there. How much of each of these, which one of these is the most important? How are you going to dose the person so you get a therapeutic effect? Okay, now again, the primary source of oxidative stress is mitochondria, the production of mitochondrial energy. At the same time, ironically, that oxidative stress damages the mitochondria. So you have the healthy mitochondria and the damaged mitochondria. We're trying to either stop the damage or repair the mitochondria, or both. Either stop the damage that's occurring or repair the mitochondria or rebuild them, which they call, the term they use is mitochondrial biogenesis, growing more mitochondria. And here's a nice schematic so you can see. We take fat, carbs, and proteins, and we crank them through the citric acid cycle, the electron transport chain, and then eventually we make energy from them. And if your mitochondria are working well, this whole process goes really smoothly. If the mitochondria are not working well, then it's, chaos. And you can see here, this is what we're testing. We're testing the ability to burn fat by measuring adipate, superate, ethylmalonate. We're testing the ability to burn carbs by measuring pyruvate and lactate. We're testing the ability to make energy from proteins with the keto acids. We're testing the citric acid cycle itself with citrate, isocitrate, all these markers here. So each one of these dark blue highlighted things in there is a test marker. We're measuring every damn little step of this thing. It's so intense that you can do this. You don't even know. I mean, so like this doctor this morning, all she did was give the patient the basic stuff. And this person responded in a few hours. You don't have to have a biochemistry degree. You don't even really have to understand everything I'm saying today to make this stuff work. And in fact, when I see brand new doctors in our training program who've only been doing this for a month or two, just follow the right protocol based on the lab. They get the same results that I do. The old timers like who are people are in their 50s and 60s and 70s who've been doing this for 30 or 40 years. So you should not be intimidated by organic acids testing. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's very doable. And you can totally help people with this stuff. So now this is a little intimidating. But again, we're measuring citrate, cis-aconitate, and you don't have to understand each one of these markers in the beginning. And the beginning to me is like your first 10 years of practice. You just have to know what protocols you want to run on the person, right? And then we can also measure, and I'll show you this on the labs, that those of you that are really interested in biochemistry, you'll find this fascinating, which is that you can actually measure, this is the electron transport chain, right? And this goes all the way back to school. Most of you probably forgot about this, but it's complex 1, complex 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this is how we make energy at that final step within the electron transport chain. So electrons are being transported, hence the name electron transport chain, from complex to complex. They're going from here to there to there. And as that electron flow is happening, protons, you see the little H pluses, are moving. And those protons then accumulate at one side of the membrane, and then they force their way back. And that's what generates the energy that allows us to make ATP. So it's this complicated system that's working along here. But there's some little factoids that you can learn that are super simple. One is that the main nutrient that grabs these electrons and pulls them from one complex to the next is called CoQ10. And strangely enough, it grabs these electrons one at a time, if you can believe this. And I looked this up the other day. So in one brain cell, one cortical neuron, at rest, you generate 4.7 billion units of ATP. billion with a B. 4.7 billion units of ATP in one cortical neuron when you're resting. I don't know what it is when you're stressed. That's per second. That's not per hour or per lifetime. That's per second. So as we're all just sitting here, that second that just passed a second ago, one of your brain cells made almost 5 billion units of ATP. This is happening at a level, at a rate, which is, I don't think the human brain can really conceptualize, that CoQ10 is able to go back and forth and move electrons at that rate. But you can imagine how finely tuned this is. And what if your CoQ10 levels or magnesium levels are low? This whole thing can get screwed up really easily. And in a current era where there's so many environmental toxins, that can happen. You know, people don't maybe eat the best foods. This can happen pretty easily to people. And again, you can repair this stuff. It's not that complicated. Now here's another schematic, but you do have to go back. I don't know, go to like the Khan Academy or somewhere like that online and watch like a 5-minute video on the citric acid cycle. Watch an 8-minute video on the electron transport chain and just kind of refresh your memory from when you were in school. And then this stuff will start to make a lot of sense. You just spend a couple hours some weekend and just kind of geek out online with this stuff. And when you see the labs, then you'll be like, oh, wait a minute, now I get why that's so important. So again, here's the citric acid cycle at the bottom. Here's the electron transport chain at the top. And I like this diagram because you can see glucose coming in, fatty acids coming in. And what we have a huge concern about is our fuel supply coming into the body. If glucose is not being broken down properly, you're going to have an energy deficit. If the fatty acids aren't being broken down properly, you're going to have a deficit. And you can measure for each one of these processes, not just the citric acid cycle itself, but you can measure glycolysis and beta oxidation. So glycolysis is a breaking down of glucose, and beta oxidation is a breaking down of fat. And if either of those processes are not working well, you're going to have a pretty major energy deficit. And I'll show you a little bit of detail here about that. So remember, I mentioned CoQ10. It's going back and forth, grabbing one electron at a time to make all this work. It's a big, long molecule. See how big that thing is? And we have to make it. Your body, your body produces CoQ10. I mean, you get some of it from your food, but really you have to make this stuff in order for this system to work. And so the very processes by which we make CoQ10, if they're deranged and not working well, then the person's, going to have low energy. And this is just a fun little slide here. And the only point of this whole slide is this one thing to show you here, because this is on the lab, on the organic acids test, is the final step in the production of CoQ10, which is required to make energy, is this thing here. You see it says para, with the P is para hydroxybenzoate. See that marker right there? So para hydroxybenzoate is the final thing that's required to make CoQ10. And para hydroxybenzoate is on organic acids testing. And what category is it under? Does anyone know? I don't know if anyone's memorized that whole test yet or not. It's a polyphenol marker. And what does that mean? Where do we get polyphenols? Fruits and vegetables. So if you eat enough fruits and vegetables, you will have enough polyphenols in your system. Okay, you could drink some green tea too and get them that way. Eat some blueberries, whatever. This final step in the production of CoQ10 is completely dependent on whether the person has enough fruits and vegetables in their diet. So this is just like a reminder, like it really matters what you eat. And if you're not eating foods that have polyphenols, you can't make CoQ10, and then you're off the deep end in trouble in a really bad way. Okay. And then here's another thing. I just think CoQ10 is so cool. I kind of get a little obsessive on it. But I want to spend a few minutes talking about fat burning. And then I want to show you guys some of the more advanced stuff. And so, I don't know who the audience is. Some of you may have been in practice for a long time, and this stuff is kind of old hat to you. So I'm going to wrap up in the last 5 minutes or so with some like super advanced concepts for you guys. And but first, let's talk about some more of the basics here. So on the basic side, we need to be able to supply fat for fuel. And in order to do that, you have to have all these enzymes working properly. And this is a nice diagram that shows the process. We take the fat and we use a nutrient called carnitine to get that fat through all these different membranes, right? There's 2 membranes that protect the mitochondria. And then eventually you get that fatty acid into the mitochondria, into the central, what they call the mitochondrial matrix, and then you can burn it up for fat or fuel. So if you're deficient in carnitine, you can't make energy from fat. And that becomes a big problem that's most often overlooked with a lot of patients in terms of energy deficits and that chronic fatigue or that overweight patient that just can't burn the fat, or they're just exhausted all the time because they don't have the ability to make energy from fatty acids. And at rest, when you're just sitting around like we are now, 80 to 90% of your total ATP is coming from fatty acids. If you just eaten a meal, obviously it's different, or if you're exercising really hard, it changes a little bit. But the bulk of your lifetime is spent burning fatty acids. And if this process isn't working well, then by definition, your mitochondria are going to have a big problem. Okay, and we use different long chain and short chain fatty acids to make all this happen. Some of this is diet related, but more often you're going to see these problems coming about because of toxin exposure, high levels of oxidative stress, genetic disorders, things like that. So we're thinking about the theme here then, damaged mitochondria. How can that happen? We've talked a lot about already that oxidative stress can be one of the biggest driving force in the damage of mitochondria. And then if that's happening, then people have fatigue, weight gain, depression, these kinds of things start to pop up. And so when you're reviewing the labs, you want to think about the common conditions that patients have and then tie that into the lab so that your consultation with the patient is inspiring to them. And if you learn just a little bit about each of these pathways, then you can say, gosh, it looks like from the test, your carnitine levels are low. Let me tell you a little bit about carnitine. And you only need a 1 or 2 minute explanation. You can say, carnitine is required for burn fat. And if you can't burn fat, you're going to be exhausted all the time. You're going to crave carbohydrates all the time. And you're not going to have a lot of energy. And you might, worst case scenario, have a lot of body fat. Okay. And so the patients, if you just apply the pathway that we're talking about to that specific patient's problems, then they're going to be on board with this and want to just buy carnitine from you before they even get out of their chair. They're going to be motivated if they understand a little bit about the science behind this. Not a lot, but a little bit. Don't have to spend a huge amount of time on this, okay? But you need a little bit, if I just prescribe carnitine and I don't explain why, people won't take it very often. So you need a 1 or 2 minute explanation that's scientifically accurate, to motivate the person to do all these things. And I'm going to skip through some of these slides because we're going to be a little short on time. I want to get to some of the advanced stuff. Let's see. And we're going to focus on mitochondria anyways here. And we talked about this already a little bit. Okay, so the organic acids markers, and I just put this slide up just to show you that there's a lot of them. Over time, you can learn each one of these and what they're for and why it matters, and how different types of environmental toxins damage different ones and how to fix all of them. But in the short term, you also want to get started with the treatments and not have to wait around. So if you're new to practice, again, I define that maybe as the first 10 years of practice, first 5 or 10 years of practice, then you can still get started with organic acids. You might not know every single marker in detail, but you can use these combination products that all the supplement companies have. So if you see a mitochondrial issue show up on the test, give them a combo mitochondrial supplement. And they're always named Mito something, Mitovive, Mitochondrial Energy, Mito Boost, Mito something, right? And it almost doesn't matter which one you use. Find a good quality company and, professional brand only, whatever your favorite company is. And there's, maybe 6 or 10 of them out there that are good, and a good professional brand. And then find their best mitochondrial product that's a combination product, and give that product if there's a mitochondrial problem. And then the additional support you'd want to give would be extra CoQ10, extra magnesium, maybe some extra B vitamins. It's the same thing. If you see a blood sugar regulation problem on organic acids, you don't have to know exactly what enzyme is messed up. You can give a combination blood sugar product, but just give it at a hefty enough dose that it makes a difference. And so that's one of the advantages that we have in the beginning of our practices, is that these products are available and you don't have to get super complex. I think the last slide I have here is on protocols that you guys can use, so you can get a sense of what those are like. So that's at the entry level. You look at the test, you see the mitochondrial section is not doing well, so you support it. I want to spend a few minutes, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, talking about the advanced level for those of you that have been doing this for a while. And I feel kind of compelled to get this message out because I've been working with Richard for so long, and this message got lost in the haze of time and lost in the haze of the development of our field. So again, Richard Lord, my main teacher, I talk to him, work with him twice a week now, the last 6 years. So when Richard was a young man, in the late 1960s, he went to the University of Texas at Austin to get his PhD in proteomics. He was very interested in proteins and proteomics. And at that time, there was sort of a heyday, sort of a renaissance and an amazing period of research going on in nutritional science. And one of his professors was a man named Roger Williams. And I have this imaginary scene, because Richard's described it to me, but where Richard's sticking his head out of his lab room door and Roger's running down the hall going, I just discovered pantothenic acid. I mean, these guys were literally discovering the B vitamins left and right. And you can imagine what that is like. That's incredible. They're understanding the underpinnings of human physiology and human life. And so also at that time, there's something else going on, which was that they were starting to do organic acids testing. And originally organic acids tests were developed for newborn babies, and they're still used this way. So the day a baby is born anywhere in the United States, they take a little drop of blood, a little heel stick, and they look for inborn errors of metabolism that could be life-threatening for that child. And if, of course, there is one present, and they have a genetic disorder, then they would tell the parents immediately, because if that child ate the wrong foods or did the wrong things, could potentially have really, really serious neurological problems. So you can imagine Richard in the late 60s, they're literally discovering the B vitamins, and then they're discovering at the same time that you can test newborn babies for these inborn errors of metabolism that are all metabolically based, that are solved, the baby's problems are solved by special diets or special nutrients like amino acids, B vitamins. Sometimes it's avoiding something, sometimes it's taking something. And then it's crystallized in Dr. Lord's brain when he was quite young, in his mid-20s, maybe I should synthesize these two concepts. Maybe my lifetime will be about finding all the vitamins. Obviously, we've discovered all the vitamins now. We understand what all the B vitamins are, and vitamin E and all this other stuff. Understand that the human life is dependent upon these vitamins. By definition, what is a vitamin? It's something that you can't make. You have to get it from your food. And then combining that knowledge with the genomics. So it's the metabolomics, the metabolism stuff, that's the nutrients, with the genomics, that's the inborn errors of metabolism. And Richard conceptualized this in the 1960s. About 20 years later, he started a lab company with Andy Brawley, and they started the first organic acids tests. And these tests originally, in Richard's mind, were done to screen for genomic issues, to screen for genetic problems, to screen for SNPs, not life-threatening ones. Those are identified when the baby is newborn, but for adult onset metabolic disorders that are genetically based. That's why he developed the testing that we do all the time. And when Andy, his business partner, was trying to sell these tests, he realized that no one would understand the idea. This is the 80s, okay? No one would understand the idea of doing genomics. There wasn't even really the term in widespread use yet. And so they turned these tests, they marketed these tests as nutritional screening tools or nutritional evaluations. In fact, one of them these days is named the Nutrival. Clearly, what the test name is implying is that you're going to you're evaluating someone's nutritional status. That's the most superficial level of this. That's like calling, I don't know, like what's my favorite car? That's like calling, Alfa Romeo, maybe like a 1969 Spider. That's like calling it a car. Okay, yeah, it's a car, but it's this whole other thing that's more important than the fact that it gets you from place to place. So looking at these tests as nutritional evaluations is looking at the most surface area of what they're designed to do. And here you have inborn errors of metabolism affecting enzymes and transport proteins required for catabolism of amino acids. So what we're really looking at when we look at organic acids, if you want to go to this deeper, more advanced level, are adult onset disorders that are genetically based. And believe it or not, there's a whole group of scientists that study this. And I just joined them this year. I was so excited when I found this group, SSIEM. Well, it's like $100 to join. It's not even that expensive. And they have a special wing here. You can see in the little clip I pulled off the internet, the Adult Metabolic Physicians Group. There are scientists all throughout the world. Most of these people are not in the United States. They're in other countries who are looking at the adult version of these pediatric disorders. This is what Richard saw decades ago. And in fact, they published a book about 10 years ago, which you can buy, which is called Inherited Metabolic Diseases in Adults. This is exactly what we're trying to find on organic acids. And there's a movement now in the conventional medical world where you can see here, this is an article I pulled. There's hundreds of examples of this, but think metabolic in adults with diagnostic challenges. And this is conventional neurology. This is from the Neurology Clinical Practice Journal. This is not like the Townsend Journal. This is not like a bunch of naturopaths and acupuncturists talking about natural medicine. Neurologists should consider the possibility of an inherited metabolic disorder in adults with neurologic symptoms that may or may not mimic those seen in affected children, such as in the case of biotin deficiency. Okay, so what they're saying is, we're these science guys, and we've been studying this for a while, and we think that the neurologists and the family practitioners and the other doctors out there that are looking at the general population should think about metabolic disorders that are genetically based in adults. This is radical because it's up until this point, this has only been dealt with in children. And now, just a quick reminder, Richard saw this in the 1960s. He designed this test to determine these kinds of problems. And I want to show you now, to take a pause from the lecture part and review a lab or two. I want to show you how you can interpret organic acids at the simple level, which is you give them a generic, good quality mitochondrial support product, plus some extra CoQ10, magnesium, and free-form amino acids. Done, patient gets better. But those of you that are more advanced, I also want to show you how you can see these genetic disorders play out in a lab. And you can work with the labs in both ways. Here's a basic protocol. We use this all the time. Now, you got to do the test first. You can't just give people this stuff or it's not going to work very well. But just so you get an idea of what we're actually talking about. Let's say the lab is screwed up in a certain way. CoQ10, magnesium, some B complex, a hefty amount of free-form amino acids. Probably I should have put a multivitamin on there too. Okay, so that would be like a in-depth program based on the lab. Or that last bullet point, you can also use a combination program. That's super simple. You just, find the mito whatever from whatever your favorite company is, supplement-wise. Make sure you're using a professional brand company, not a flaky company, but a good quality one. And then prescribe that combination product for the mitochondria if you're not comfortable with these, lab interpretations yet. And that is, you can, and again, like I see this in my classes every day. The doctors that do the simple stuff, you're going to get results that are pretty dramatic. If you get to more advanced levels, you can help people at a deeper level. But don't be shy and don't wait to start doing this until, some mystical period is passed in your life. Don't wait another 2 years. Just start testing people now. And you'll just be rewarded with all these changes that you see in your patients. So a quick reminder for people that joined us late is that we have an exclusive for Rupa Health. It's a version of our telehealth masterclass that's at a 20% discount. So this was in response to COVID. When COVID first hit, we started this telehealth group and we had 1,200 doctors signed up because everyone was just freaking out because they had to close their clinics. And so I ended up turning all that material into a masterclass on telehealth. And I've been doing this telemedicine thing for 15, 16 years now. So I love it. I think it's great. And, some doctors, maybe you only want to do telehealth on Wednesdays and still have your regular clinic. That's fine. Some of you may want to go to full-time telehealth like I am. That's good too, so you can do it either way. But we talk about the essential components of a telemedicine clinic. We'll look at your role, how patients fit into this, the kind of office infrastructure to make it all work. I'm a real kind of infrastructure geek. I really like computers and I like to get things set up systems wise, to make this work. And the overhead is ridiculously low, so you can save a lot on overhead. We'll talk about 30-minute phone consultations, so you can kind of see an example of how I do a workup with a new patient. That's one of the first questions we usually get. Well, what do I say to the new patient? How do I make this work? And that new patient consultation, if you want to look at it from a sales perspective, is really how you're going to sell the lab kit. If you have a solid, good new patient consultation, that patient will buy the labs that you want them to, 95% of the time. So if your new patient consultations are yielding lab purchases less than 90% of the time, then you could make that better. If half the people you talk to buy the labs, you could work on that skill. It's not a skill that I was naturally born with, but I've learned through various communication workshops and through doing this stuff for 25 years, how to actually sell people lab kits in that new patient interview. That's really important because if they don't buy the lab, you can't do the program and they're not going to get better. So it's an important step. And then we have all kinds of steps and scripts and stuff in here so that you guys can learn basically how to sell labs, how to get that patient up and started with the program. And again, if you don't sell the lab, you're not going to have a very successful program because you're going to be either losing the patient or just guessing about what to do. Anyways, you guys get a 20% discount from Rupa for that, from Rupa, just helping kind of sponsor it, which is wonderful. And let me show you, we have time for one lab. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I pulled up this one here. So I was teaching this class this morning, and we had a doctor that presented this case. And I thought, well, this would be a good one to share with you guys. So this is a 12-year-old kid. This is an organics profile from Genova. And we're about to look at this lab from two different perspectives. Because some of you are new and maybe haven't done this for a long time and want to do like the simple version, totally support that. And some of you have been doing this for a really long time and maybe would benefit from some advanced training. So here's an organic acids profile. It's all the stuff I just showed you slides on: fat metabolism, carb metabolism, citric acid cycle. Now we're measuring these steps. Remember I said, let me show you. Let me just flash back here for a second here. You can see it. This one slide has it all in one picture. I think that's the best way to do it. Okay, now we're looking at fat burning, carb burning, amino acid function, citric acid cycle, all that. So those are represented here. Can you burn fat? Can you burn carbs? How's your citric acid cycle? And to keep it simple, if there's a high marker, it's bad. If the low markers are more complicated. Now, how hard is this? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the 8 markers under the citric acid cycle are high. So clearly there's an energy problem there. What are you going to do supplement-wise? That's the protocol I just showed you. In case you forget, it's written right into the lab. B complex, CoQ10, amino acids, and magnesium. How much? Well, B complex, 1 or 2 a day, usually 1. CoQ10, 100 milligrams twice a day. Free-form amino acids in a powder, usually 1 to 2 teaspoons twice a day. You could do that on an empty stomach, okay? 1 to 2 teaspoons of free-form amino acids. And then magnesium, maybe around 400 milligrams a day, plus a multi, okay? And with someone with a lab like this, that program or protocol will usually make a pretty profound difference in how they're feeling. Now, does this person need a lot of carnitine? Not at all. See, the carnitine markers are all normal. So we're not going to give a lot of carnitine because they don't need it. And that would be a waste and it wouldn't make them feel any better. In fact, it could make them worse. Any nutrient that can be beneficial can become harmful if you give it to the wrong person. So you can't just give everybody carnitine. You can only give carnitine to people who test for it. Even an antioxidant can be harmful if the person doesn't need it. So you can only really prescribe supplements based on labs. Otherwise, you're going to make people worse. And that's the whole do no harm thing. You can't do that. Okay, so this person doesn't need any carnitine, but she needs a lot of support for the citric acid cycle. Now, what the alternative would be, if you don't want to get into the individual nutrients, is you could use mitochondrial ATP from Pure Encapsulations, or mitochondrial energy from Designs for Health, or Mitovive from Metagenics. Any of those products are going to have little bits of everything that this person needs to get their mitochondria working. So that's another way to solve it with a single combination product. Now, what's really interesting about this set of labs is that the neurotransmitter section is perfect. So does this person need any brain support? Not even a little bit. Major complaint was anxiety and depression, not related to the brain, related to the mitochondria. There's one other marker on here that you gotta know, and it's here under detox. So these three markers here, 33, 34, 30, 30, 31, and 32, these three markers here are all, I'm trying to highlight them, but it's not working very well. These three, there we go. These guys here, especially sulfate, are markers for glutathione. So if sulfate's low, it means glutathione is low. Remember how we talked all about how glutathione is related to this? So if your glutathione is low, you can't protect your mitochondria. So then what happens? Your mitochondria get damaged, and then these markers go sky high because you got these damaged mitochondria. Okay, damaged mitochondria, why are they damaged? Low glutathione. So you give glutathione and the other nutrients that I just mentioned, and people miraculously get better. We have about 3 minutes, and then I want to cut over because I questions, in case any of you have questions. I just want to show you one other test here. These are all from class this morning, but this one is quite remarkable. Now, this is the deep end of the pool, okay? This is as complex as it can get. I was really excited when I saw this test. So at a simple level, we're saying this test evaluates nutritional status, mitochondrial status. The last patient we saw, damaged mitochondria, CoQ10, magnesium, amino acids, B vitamins, give them that stuff. Give them the glutathione because that marker was low. That's probably why the mitochondria are damaged in the first place. Case solved, test them in 6 months. Oh, by the way, you have to retest people. You can't just give them a program. You have to retest. At the end of 6 months, we retest everybody, see what happened, see if it worked or not. Now, this case here, you can see, for those of you that are really into this stuff, you can see pyruvate is high, alpha-ketoglutarate is high, and then check this out. You're not going to see this every day. These three markers here are high: alpha-keto, isovalerate, isocaparate, and this third one, which is hard to pronounce, alpha-keto, beta-methylvalerate. These are all three high. So when you see that particular pattern, there are 5 of these markers that are high. That can only occur when a person has a genetic disorder with a certain enzyme. So now what we're seeing on this lab is a genetic disorder, which is what Richard Lord was interested in developing these tests. So you can interpret this at a superficial level and say, oh, your B vitamin markers are high. You need a B complex. Or you can take it to the level of saying, wow, those 3 are high, these other 2 are high. You have a genetic problem with your keto dehydrogenase enzymes, and we can fix this with very high dosages of B vitamins. So again, simple interpretation, give a B vitamin. Complex interpretation, you can see genetic disorders expressing on this test. Well, I'll end with one final comment before we go to questions, which is that, I was in practice for 25 years. I kind of thought I understood organic acids. And then I met Dr. Lord. And what he's taught me in the last 6 years has made me realize that this test is the foundation for human physiology, whatever you want to call it, metabolomics, genomics. Like, you got to know if your patients can make energy from fat, carbs. You have to know their citric acid cycle function. You have to know these other markers on here that we're not talking about. Methylation has to be measured. You have to measure neurotransmitters. Look, this person's got really screwed up neurotransmitters. You have to know about their brain. Doubly, triply have to know these days about detoxification pathways. And so these are like really foundational issues: liver detox capacity, brain function, mitochondrial issues. All that is revealed on this one test. It's just a complicated test to interpret. And so I want to just encourage you, though, you can go with a simple level of interpretation as you're getting your skills up, but don't wait to run this test until 5 years from now. It'll just be too late. Just run them and get a little panicky and then try to figure out how to interpret them, whether you come to classes like mine or you talk to the lab company or you have a colleague that does these, because these are really the heart and soul. Organic acids is like the central component. In addition to the microbiome testing, you got to learn how to do the gut testing too, clearly. And you got to learn how to do hormones. But this is a area where a lot of people kind of don't get trained properly. And I think it's absolutely essential. So you get your hormone stuff down, you get your microbiome and GI testing down, but don't ignore organic acids, because I think you'll find you're going to solve maybe 50% of your tough cases with this test alone. And if you don't have it as a tool, you're going to be kind of limited in potential help you can offer people. All right, so let me turn it back over to Anthony and the wonderful folks at Rupa Health and see if there are any questions for our last few minutes here. And I'll show you guys one more time. If you want to sign up, there is a special offer that Rupa has for you all. There it is.
Dr. Kalish, thank you so much. That was so in-depth and informative. And as you mentioned, the mitochondria are just so important to analyze in patients. And so really helping resolve these problems can be, as you said, truly life-changing. So amazing presentation today. Thank you again for doing that. We did receive some questions during the presentation, so let's just jump into those now. And so the first question is, what do mitochondria do? How do they work? So more of a fundamental question for you.
Yeah, so and this is like how I'd explain it to a patient too, which is that the mitochondria are responsible for producing energy for every cell in the body. And what are the areas that are super important, that you would be dead in seconds if they weren't working, would be your heart. So the mitochondria are absolutely responsible for all the energy produced in the cardiovascular system. And your heart uses a lot of energy, right? It's pumping all the time. And then the energy that's used in the brain, that would probably be second. So you can have like that patient example I showed where there's this extreme anxiety for her whole life because of her mitochondria. I never would have thought of that when I was looking at the history of the patient, but that's what was happening. And then the third area is liver detoxification capacity, because the liver pulls in a lot of energy. And I think the heart, the brain, the liver, I think they're sucking up something like 60% of the total energy for the body, just those three areas, those three organs. And so if you have a person with cardiovascular problems, brain-related problems, or detox-related problems, then you kind of have to deal with mitochondrial function and fix it.
That's very interesting. Thank you for that. Number two, Dr. Kalish, is what type of lab tests or types can you do to assess your own mitochondrial function?
Yeah, so the organic acids that we just reviewed are probably the way to start. Then a lot of people layer on top of that some kind of genomic test. Because as I was trying to point out today, you can see evidence of the genetic problems, but you're not actually measuring the SNPs. So what's very popular these days is to do, and this is complicated, but is to do the organic acids as I showed, and then to do use one of the genetic platforms to screen for all the genes related. And that really kind of doubles your information, because you might see a genetic disorder related to B6. And then you'll know, oh gosh, that's going to be critical for mitochondrial function, and so on and so on. So that correlation, or you might see a genetic disorder that has to do with production of catecholamines. And then you see on the organic acids that they have a problem with catecholamines. So right away, you can make these inferences as to what's genetically based and what's not if you have that additional lab data. And then in the bigger picture of functional medicine, we're really talking about inflammation and oxidative stress to damage mitochondria. So you always got to screen the gut and the hormonal systems, kind of assuming that people are doing that as well. And they're not just doing organic acids by themselves. It's kind of in the context of these other labs.
It's very fascinating. I love the interconnection between all of these different labs and these different aspects of patient care. So that's so helpful to understand further. And question three, Dr. Kalish, what are some common symptoms associated with poor mitochondrial function?
Yeah, so the thing you think of the most is fatigue. And that's probably the most common complaint I get in my practice. Now, and that's kind of obvious because you're talking about not enough energy being produced. So that the things that are kind of a little more subtle, you want to think about, oh, well, what about the brain? Because it's, like the patient example I had, maybe there's some depression or anxiety that's related to brain function, that's related to not enough ATP, not enough energy. Maybe there's some history of cardiovascular disease problems, cholesterol issues, high triglycerides, things like that. And then, it can extend out too to chronic pain syndromes. People who are in pain almost always have damaged mitochondria. You see it with cognitive decline, almost always, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, memory problems. Many people that have mitochondrial issues describe their symptoms as brain fog and fatigue, inability to exercise or to really be able to work out hard, that can be mitochondrial. I mean, it's not everybody that we look at, but it's one of those problems you just have to rule in or rule out because it can undermine. Like, let's say that you have a menopausal woman and you're doing a hormone program, but her fatigue is still going on and she's not sleeping well. It could be that there's a mitochondrial component in addition to the hormonal component.
So true. There's so many different conditions that can be mistaken for one or the other. So I think it's really important, as you mentioned, to be able to analyze all of those different areas. All right, Dr. Kalish, number 4 is probably related to what many people think of the mitochondria as. As I know in school, we always learned that they're the powerhouses of the cell to be able to burn fat. But how do mitochondria relate to fat burning capacity and body fat?
Yeah, so this is one that I missed for a long time. And that's why I have some slides on it now so you guys can see that. So the number one source of energy for the mitochondria is fatty acids. And that's not intuitively obvious. I think people just don't think about fat that way, but we're all burning fat. 80 to 90% of our energy right now as we're sitting here is coming from fatty acids. So if you can't burn those fatty acids effectively, you're going to be tired all the time. You're going to take those, the fats, if the fats don't go into the mitochondria, they don't just vaporize, it would be convenient if they did, but they're going to go somewhere else and cause problems. And in general, if fat doesn't go into the mitochondria for energy, that also typically means that there maybe is a problem with glycolysis also. So people start to get this insulin resistance problem. They've got carbohydrate converting into fat. They've got extra fat in the first place lying around. And what does it do? It just clogs stuff up, right? It clogs up your liver, clogs up your arteries, and it's not a good thing. And of course, then people accumulate body fat as your body's storing all this fat. And so the inability, and that was what, again, that slide I had on carnitine, the inability to do beta oxidation, the inability to burn fat is more common than you would think and causes symptoms that you would think would be associated with blood sugar irregularities. And so it's an easy one to miss if you don't do this test because the symptoms often sound like the person needs blood sugar regulation and control over glucose, when in fact it's really the fatty acids that are causing the issue.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Dr. Kalish. And we have time for just one last question for you here. All right. And that is, how do mitochondria relate to hormones, especially the thyroid hormones?
Oh, yeah. This is one of the more interesting things I've learned in the last little while. So this is my quiz question I always give when I do conferences. Sorry that we're not live. I can't see your hands, but if you're listening to this, you could just put your hand up in this, in solidarity or something. So the question is, when we think about hormones, we think about a hormone and then something that it does. So like you think about insulin and immediately you think it regulates your blood sugar. It gets glucose to go into cells. And you think about testosterone and you think, most of the time it's for men and women, but usually think it maybe as a male hormone. And you think about estrogen, men make estrogen too, but usually you think about it more as a female hormone and it causes, different things to happen when girls go through puberty. Testosterone skyrockets when you work out really hard. And then when you think about thyroid, what do people think? Like the first thing is what does it control? It controls basal metabolic rate. And I've asked this question to hundreds of doctors over the years. And then, okay, well, that's cool. Yeah, we all learned that. So what does that mean? Where is that happening? Where is that happening? And it's such an easy question. No one ever gets it right but it also at the same time reveals our thinking process. So the answer is the mitochondria. So when we say the thyroid controls metabolic rate, how is it doing that? It's doing that by regulating metabolism, which is controlled by the mitochondria. So you will often see people who have a thyroid problem. Maybe they're even on thyroid hormones, but they're not really resolved. Their fatigue is not gone. They're still suffering. Those people usually have mitochondrial issues. So no matter how much thyroid hormone they take, the mitochondria just physically aren't present there to respond and not respond properly. So, and it can work the other way as well. You can have a major mitochondrial problem for a long time that would disrupt the thyroid. So those two go back and forth, and it makes a lot of sense. So if you have a thyroid case who's not resolved, or who you feel like needs a little extra workup, organic acids testing for the mitochondria will often reveal that there's a problem that you can fix there, which will just help their thyroid work that much better.
Dr. Kalish, thank you so much for answering those questions. They were really, really good questions. And I know there was a few remaining and we weren't able to get to everyone's question, but please reach out to us after this live class if you still need help. So again, Dr. Kalish, thank you so much. Thank you for all who are attending today's live class. Again, huge shout out to Dr. Kalish and the Kalish Institute. Such an amazing and interesting topic today on repairing damaged metabolism with applying the organic acids laboratory interpretation. So extremely helpful. We hope to see you all at the next live class. Thank you again. But before you leave, Adrian Martinez, who is our head of practitioner partnerships, is going to jump on now and perform a live demo of Rupa Health for you. So if you'd like to learn more, please stick around. And Adrian, thank you so much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Anthony. And thank you again, Dr. Kalish. Great to see you. That was an amazing presentation. Super excited to speak with you all about Rupa Health. I know that Dr. Kalish mentioned who we are prior, but if you are interested and you are sticking around, going to just run through a quick demonstration of Rupa, who we are, what we do, and really why we have dedicated our lives to, making root cause medicine the standard of healthcare. That is truly what we believe in. So when you think about functional medicine and a lot of the testing that goes into functional medicine, there are a number of pain points that could be associated to it. Most practitioners who are ordering these tests are traditionally working with multiple labs, anywhere from 3 to 6, sometimes even more, right? And then that opens up a whole host of hurdles, everywhere from one, how are you managing all those different accounts that you're working with? How are you receiving and tracking all the results that are coming in? Each test, or rather each lab, has its own specialization. So you want to, of course, be able to offer the gambit of tests to your patients. But how are your patients paying for these tests? Are they paying the labs directly? Are you managing billing and then, paying the patients separately, or billing the patient separately? Who's coordinating the phlebotomies? How are you hand-holding the patient with all the questions that are associated to these tests, right? And so those are some of the pain points that we commonly hear at Rupa Health. And that's why we've created a platform designed to ease, if not eliminate a lot of those pain points that can oftentimes be associated with that. So what I'll do here is I'll share my screen if I can find that button, and we can go from there. So it looks like I already did. Cool. So what you're all seeing here is the Rupa Health dashboard. So to provide some context as to what we do is we've created a platform that's brought on over 20 plus different labs onto our site, allowing you as a practitioner to not only place all your orders from any one of our partner labs, but also track and manage the status, view your results, send them to the patients, basically make your operations more efficient. Right. So any lab that you are certified and licensed to order from directly, you're able to order from Rupa Health. You don't have to go through and create a separate account. You need one Rupa account, and we can effectively take it from there, right? You'll be able to order from any one of our labs. The second and equally as important component of Rupa Health, which can sometimes be overlooked, is that patient experience. So we've built an end-to-end patient experience as well. So as soon as you're ready to place an order, we can effectively take it from there. So we can manage billing for your patients. We accept not only cash and credit, but we do HSA, we do FSA, as well as setting up a 3-month interest-free payment plan with your patients. These are some of the ways that we lower that barrier of entry for your patients to get access to these tests, right? And oftentimes, these very expensive cash pay tests. Of course, we do have the option of you as a practitioner paying for the tests yourself and then billing the patient outside. We will send over our own curated FAQs and instructions. If your patient has questions on how to take the test, they'll reach out to us and our team, and we'll facilitate that. If there's a specimen issue, we'll work with the patient in the lab directly to manage those specimen issues, right? And generally, those would be things that you and your team would have to do. Beyond that, we'll help coordinate a phlebotomy if there is a blood draw required by sending over options for the patient to go to. And throughout this entire process, if the patient has questions, or if they need some additional options for their blood draw locations, they can reach out to us and our team, and we will facilitate everything. From there, you're alerted as the results come in, and you're able to view everything within Rupa Health. So that is a high level of what we do. I'm going to jump in very quickly and show you exactly how it works. To place an order on Rupa is super simple. You'll go ahead and start an order. We need 3 bits of information to complete this order, rather to start this order: patient's first name, last name, and email address. From there, we collect everything else directly from the patients to complete the order. This allows you to operate more efficiently to place these orders, as well as guarantees the accuracy of your patient's information in case they move addresses, phone numbers, so on and so forth. We keep it consistent. Jumping into your order screen, the first sets of tests that you're going to see up at the top here are going to be bundles. So we can create custom bundles, which are sets of tests, sets of blood panels, combos of blood tests, and blood tests and tests, regular tests, whatever you want to be. You can create a custom bundle, and that way it's just one single test, or rather one single button that you're pushing, and that group of tests is added into your cart. Down below that, you can create a favorites list as well. So a favorites test is just a test that you're commonly ordering. You can go ahead and put a little heart next to it, and that way it'll be among the first tests that you're ordering. And so you don't have to comb through your entire catalog to find these tests that you're commonly ordering, but of course, you have access to the entire catalog down below. So if there's a specific test that you're looking for, you're able to find it down below. We offer over 2,000 plus different tests and work with over 20 different labs, right? So we make things as streamlined as possible for you to not only place your orders, but to find the specific tests that you're looking for from any one of the big labs out there, right? Once those kits are added to your cart, they'll appear over here on the right-hand side. We offer wholesale practitioner pricing. So the same prices that you would get going directly to these labs are going to be the same prices reflected in our catalogs. We don't upcharge the test kits at all. You'll get the same prices. If there's an add-on test available, we'll highlight that here with the button. And it's as simple as clicking the add-on test button and adding whichever add-on test that you want to add. Additionally, within the screen, you're able to get an idea of the details. Sample instructions, again, we'll send those instructions to your patients, but if you want to download a copy for yourself, you're able to do that here, as well as a sample report, and get an idea of all the biomarkers associated with any one of our tests. The kits additionally will default to be drop shipped directly to the patients. So no longer will you have to ship or stock any inventory and any of your in your practice, right? You'll have the kits sent directly to the patients with the requisition form. We'll walk them how to fill out the requisition form, making life a lot easier for you and your team. It'll also default to having us bill the patient directly. So we'll invoice the patient directly. And again, we offer multiple different payment options, which is amazing. But if you decide to pay for the tests yourself, let's say you maybe charge an additional interpretation fee, for example, right? You're able to pay for the tests yourself and then bill the patient outside of Rupa. From there, you have the option of adding notes for the patient. So for example, if the patient is taking a supplement regimen that you want them to continue to take throughout the process, you can add notes for the patient there. They'll see those. Any notes for us, and then of course, ICD-10 codes. So there's nothing preventing your patient from creating a super bill to submit to insurance for reimbursement. To do that, you'd simply be able to add ICD-10 codes. We have a full catalog built out in here, so you don't need to know the ICD-10 code off the top of your head. You simply need to know a keyword associated to it, and then from there, it'll bring up all the associated ICD-10 codes, and then your patient will be able to create a super bill. We'll send over a template their way, and they can submit that to insurance for reimbursement. From there, it's as simple as clicking send to patient, and that's how you create an order on Rupa Health. Now, a couple quick things to know. You can also schedule an order. So this is a really cool feature here. So let's say that you're placing an order for a patient, or you know that you want to retest a patient out in the future in advance. You can go ahead and schedule that order out in advance, which is a great tool there because it automates that process for you. And then very importantly is, how do we make money here at Rupa, right? How is our revenue generated? So I mentioned a moment ago that we offer wholesale practitioner pricing with all of our tests, which is great. But the way that we generate our revenue is there's a 7% processing and ordering fee on the cost of each order. Now, this is paid for by whoever's paying for the tests. So if you're having us invoice the patient directly, the patient will be the one absorbing that cost. What is the potential savings here? Well, the Rupa savings in this case is $151. What that means is that if you were to refer your patients to order these tests directly from Great Plains or Genova or any one of the labs, there's traditionally two prices, the patient price and the practitioner price. That patient price tends to be tens, if not sometimes hundreds of dollars more expensive. So we're offering that lowest possible price to your patient. What they're paying is that 7% processing and ordering fee. So in this example, for example, they're saving over $100 by getting their test done through Rupa. So that is how our pricing works. Beyond that, Rupa Health is a free platform to sign up for, a free platform to use. That 7% is the only time that we'll go ahead and generate that revenue. And again, if you're having us invoice the patient directly, they'll be the ones paying for that. What that means for you as a practitioner in your practice, Rupa Health is free. So that's how you place your order. What I'm going to show you quickly is how we track all our orders. So within this main dashboard is where you'll track all of your orders. You're able to search by specific patient. You can run filters by status of the order. As you can see, we'll update the statuses of all of our orders. You can click into any of your in progress orders at any time to get an idea of where these currently are at. For example, you can see here all of my different tests from 3 different labs ordered. Sample arrived at the lab for Great Plains on June 1st. We're expecting those results in on June 12th. You're alerted via email as those results come in. And from there, you're able to click into it and you can view the results, download them directly from Rupa. These are the same exact results that you'd be getting going directly to the lab. We're not making any adjustments or interpretations on them. They're the exact same results. You can send the results to the patient. So another HIPAA compliant channel that you can send the results directly to the patient. We will never send the results directly to the patient. So definitely take note of that. But if the patient reaches out to us and does want a copy of their results, we'll first reach out to you to see if it's okay, but we'll never send them without your consent. From there, you can actually schedule a clinical consult. So should you need some additional assistance interpreting these results, you can schedule a clinical consultation directly with Genova or Dutch or whichever lab you're working with. And then lastly, you have access to a digital requisition. So that's how you're tracking all of your tests, all of your orders in one place without having to go to traditionally every single portal to do this. So streamlining there in terms of efficiency. What I'll show you now is what the patient experiences. So here's a timeline of what happens as soon as you place that order through Rupa Health and send it to your patient. Your patient will get a notification from us. That notification will vary whether you're paying for the tests or you're having us invoice the patient directly. The kits will be shipped out within 24 hours. So one thing that might differentiate us from some labs is that we wait till receiving payment before shipping any tests out, okay? From there, we'll send over FAQs and instructions that are curated by us. We'll check in and follow up with the patient. I think this is a very, very important step. I talk to practitioners who sometimes don't even have an automated way or just don't simply have the time to follow up with patients, right? And what that leads to is poor compliance rates, right? So we want to ensure that the compliance rates are as high as possible. And these check-ins and leveraging the technology at our fingertips is one of the ways that we do that. From there, you're notified as the results come in. So what does this all look like? Well, this is the communications that will be sent out if the patient is the one being invoiced. So hi, Joshua, Dr. Jordan has ordered these tests for you. We'll introduce who we are, and then we'll highlight the different payment options that we accept. So just to reiterate, not only do we do cash and credit, but we can do HSA, we can do FSA, as well as setting up a 3-month interest-free payment plan with the patient. From there, we'll collect all the necessary information to complete the order. Demographic information, shipping information, billing information, whatever's necessary, and we'll highlight the test that was ordered for them. If the patient wants to set up a interest-free payment plan, we can go ahead and do that with them. If you decide to pay for the order and then have the billing separate outside of Rupa, the communications will look a little bit different, but the patient experience will still be the exact same. So we're effectively going to collect the shipping and demographic information. We will show them the test that was ordered, but we will not show them the price of that test. There, we'll notify the patient once the kits have been shipped out. And then you have personalized instructions sent directly to the patient. So on the left-hand side, you can get an idea of the email that's sent their way. So again, they're not only going to get instructions on how to complete their tests, but also how to fill out the requisition. And if there's a blood draw required, we can either customize those instructions based off your recommendations. So if you have a phlebotomist that you want the patient to see directly, then we can take that information. If not, we will send over the options based off of the lab that they're working with. Each blood lab will have their own directory. And so we'll send over those options. But if the patient has any questions along the way, whether it's how to take their tests or how, or if they can't work with any of the phlebotomy options we've sent over, they'll reach out to us and our team, and we will facilitate answering all those questions for you. From there, we'll check in with the patient, and then you're notified via email as the results come in. So what I've just talked to you about are the 3 primary components to Rupa Health. Track and manage all your orders in one place. Apologize, that's my dog in the background. Track and manage all of your orders in one place. And then have a more streamlined patient experience where patients can come to one phlebotomy, coordinate their phlebotomy, and then of course managing any specimen issues. So essentially taking all the heavy lifting off of your shoulders and bringing it onto ours. With that, I'm going to jump back to the main dashboard for just a moment, and we could take a look at some other really cool features. So you get an idea of all of the labs that we work with within the test catalog. So clicking into the test catalog, you can get a high level overview of all the labs that we're working with on the left-hand side and all of the tests on the right. As I mentioned a moment ago, over 20 plus labs and then over 2,000 tests. You can run filters, searches, create your favorites list, look into the details, download copies of the instructions. Anything that you need to do in terms of getting an idea of what we offer can be found within the lab test catalog. Rupa University, quick plug to where you guys are right now. This is an amazing feature that we've created and Dr. Anthony has helped build. So what we do is we have influencers and doctors who are just top of their field come in and give speeches and talks regarding topics impacting today's functional medicine landscape. So you're able to hop into any of these live classes that we're offering generally every Wednesday afternoon, join them for free. But if you happen to miss one, no problem. We actually always record them and upload them into this catalog. So you're always able to jump back in and view any class that was recorded. We also, of course, have support. Not only do we provide patient support, but also practitioner support. So you're able to hop into this HIPAA compliant channel at any time, ask any questions, and our team will be sure to get back to you. Now, in the settings, Rupa Health is created not just for solo practitioners. We can set and work with really practices of any size. We can set things up into a clinic form. So if you are, have another practitioner that you work alongside with, or a physician's assistant, or somebody on your staff who helps, facilitate all of these labs, we can invite them to join the account so they can help create that as well. You can create your custom bundles within here, add your preferred phlebotomist information. So there's a lot of cool specialization that we can do. And then last shout out here will be within the support channel. You can find the answers to really any questions that you might have, things that we just covered. If you do need some assistance, for example, just another quick plug to our physician's authorization program. If you're currently not licensed or your certifications don't allow you to order directly from labs, we do have a program called physician authorization, which will be rolled out within the next few weeks here that would allow those practitioners whose licenses may be limiting to order from labs. So go ahead and join the waitlist here. And of course, things like the magazines, the podcasts, we're creating a ton of content these days. So, beyond just being able to track and manage all of your orders and facilitate the patient experience, Rupa Health wants to be a platform that helps you evolve as a practitioner as well. So with that, my name is Adrian Martinez. I'm the head of practitioner partnerships. Here's my contact information. So, if you do have any questions or are interested in hopping on a more personalized demo that would be more suited towards your specific practice, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I'd be more than happy to hop on a quick Zoom to walk through everything. But I'll pass it back to Dr. Anthony and thank you all for joining this afternoon. Super excited to have you on board with Rupa Health and excited to speak with you some of you soon.